Welcome to Who Is, where if you wonder, I answer. This is the first video of many on that channel, so don't forget to hit on the notification bell to get your daily dose every time that I'll upload. And without further ado, because we hate long introduction, let's start the first episode of that series and learn who is Aron Ralston. Aron Lee Ralston was born the October 27, 1975 in the state of Indiana in USA. Before being known for his famous accident, he was an ordinary person who had a passion for rock climbing and mountaineering. He graduated from the Carnegie Mellon University in mechanical engineering, French, and even piano. He moved to the Southwest to work at Intel as engineer, but realized 5 years later that corporate life wasn't for him and quit his job to dedicate his time to his passion. Going to Aspen in Colorado in 2002, he got hired as seller in a high mountain sports equipment shop, but will be absent a lot to fulfill the goal that he wanted to achieve, which was to climb Denali, the highest peak in North America. He would then climb full-time as preparation for Denali. He climbed 47 of the 54 14ers, which are the mountains that are at least 14,000 feet tall. His goal was to be the first one to climb them all in solo during the winter. But in February 2003, a first accident happened. While backcountry skiing on Resolution Peak in central Colorado with two friends, Ralston was caught in an avalanche. He ended up buried up to his neck in the snow. One of his friends had to dig him out, and together they succeed to rescue the third friend. "It was horrible. It should have killed us," Ralston later said. A severe avalanche warning had been issued that day, and if Ralston and his friends had seen that before climbing the mountain, they could have avoided a situation that could have caused their death. Normally this kind of accident would have slowed him down, but did the opposite. One of his friends even said Aron is perpetually searching for his limits. Not content with climbing a peak as quickly as possible, he has to run the last 300 meters. But be careful, he knows his abilities perfectly and always assesses the risks. Later, Aron would even admit himself, "I have reached a point where I had to constantly come close to death to feel alive. Risk is like a drug, the more you do it, the more you need it." But I think that nothing would prepare him for what he was about to endure. The April 25, 2003, Aron decided to pack his stuff to explore the Canyonlands National Park. He alternated between hikes, bike and climbing, and even decided to camp at night on site. The next morning, the 26th, around 9 a.m., he rode his bicycle 15 miles to the Blue John Canyon, an 11-mile-long gorge that in some places measures just 3 feet wide. The 27 years old then locked his bike and started his hike toward the canyon's opening. He would then meet two young ladies named Megan and Christy, with whom he'll spend few hours in the canyon. After that, he will go his own way to explore the Blue John Canyon, an ideal place for climbing. Or at least, that's what he thought. Around 2:45 p.m., Aron takes a narrow tunnel, and in order to go further down this tunnel, he leans on a rock stuck between the two walls of the canyon. The rock, although appearing stable at first glance, does not support Aron's weight and becomes dislodged. Aron falls into the canyon, followed by the rock weighing several hundred kilos. The young man screamed with pain as the rock crushes and traps his right hand against the wall. He tried in vain for hours to release his right arm and call for help. But the 27 years old was trapped 100 feet below the desert surface and 20 miles away from the nearest paved road. To make his matter worse, he told no one that he was exploring the canyon. Aron realized that no one was coming. He started to go in survival mode and to inventory his provisions. He found himself with 2 burritos, some chunks of a candy bar, and less than a liter of water. He also has with him his climbing equipment, harness, ropes, carabiners. No cell phone, but a camera, and finally a small cheap multi-tool knife. With an incredible clarity while trapped there, he started with rationing his water, put in place with his equipment a winch to rest his legs, and built a makeshift hammock for the night. He also thought about using his knife to cut some pieces of the rock to free his hand, but in vain. Unlikely to be saved by a hiker who would have passed by the isolated area, Aron spent 6 days and 5 nights trying every option possible to get out of this situation. He tried to lift the rock using his ropes and carabiners as pulleys. Used the knife to blow off small fragments of the rock, hoping to loosen it in the process, but in vain. The nights are extremely painful for Aron because of their coldness and the lack of clothes that he is on. He therefore suffered from hypothermia but also from dehydration. Yes, indeed, he also unfortunately ran out of water and was forced to do something that no one wished for. To survive, Aron is forced to drink his own urine that he stocked in his water bottle, which will cause him infection that, add to the list, weakened him. After 2 days spent in the canyon, hot by day and cold by night, Aron started to suffer from severe hallucinations. The 4th day, giving up all hopes that he would survive, he resigned to his fate. He pulled out his knife and decided to carve his name on the canyon wall with his birth date, his presumed date of death, and the letters RIP. Once done, he used his camera to record goodbyes to his family and friends, and tried to sleep. During that night, between pain and fatigue, he had a dream where he saw a little boy looking at him with a smile and playing with him. He was convinced that it was a sign of his future little boy, and that gave him extra energy, and when he had finished his last rations of food, he decided on the final solution. The last solution was to amputate himself. Aron already tried that solution at the beginning, but he didn't know how he'd cut through his bone. The knife that he had was one of the cheapest qualities. It was a cheap multi-tool, the kind you get for free if you bought a $15 flashlight, he later said. Maybe he couldn't cut his bones, but he could break them. Using the torque from his trapped arm, he managed to break his ulna and his radius. He then proceeded to put in place a tourniquet with the tube of his water bottle to cut off his circulation. Then the most painful part started. He used his cheap knife to first cut through his skin, then he arrived to the muscle that he cut as well and used a pair of pliers from his multi-tool knife to cut through his tendons. He left his arteries for last, knowing that after he had severed them, he wouldn't have much time. A lot of people still wonder how after 6 days and 5 nights, punctuated by hallucinations, lack of nutrients and water, as well as extreme fatigue, he had the strength to go through the process and to not even pass out. He will later say that all the desires, joys, and euphorias of a future life came rushing into me. Maybe this is how I handled the pain. I was so happy to be taking action. After an hour and 5 minutes, Aron finally freed himself from the rock, leaving a part of his right arm with it. He lost 25% of his blood volume during the process. But the fight was still on for Aron, as he had to get out of the slot canyon and to reach out for help before losing all of his blood. High on adrenaline, he strapped himself up and somehow managed to scale a 65-foot cliff to escape the canyon. Exposed to the fierce sun and finally out of the slot, Aron retained sufficient lucidity and mental strength to start his hike towards his car. He even managed to fill his water bottle in a nearby freshwater pond. But he still needed to join civilization. Aron walked painfully during 6 miles, or a total of 5 hours, under the harsh sun before meeting a family of Dutch tourists who were able to provide him with water and a little food. He was finally picked up by a search and rescue helicopter dispatched by his family to look for him. Watching these scenes on film, that's where I start getting all weepy-eyed, says Ralston, because when I see that helicopter, what I'm seeing is my mom, because she made the rescue happen. He was then taken at the Moab hospital. The medics will later say that the timing could not have been more perfect. Had Ralston amputated his arm any sooner, he likely would have bled to death. And had he waited any longer, he probably would have died in the canyon. The men from the National Park Service headed to Blue John Canyon 2 days later to recover the remains of Ralston's right forearm. It took 13 men and heavy equipment to rotate the enormous boulder and free the arm. The arm was then cremated and the ashes restored to Aron. 6 months after his accident, he returned to the exact spot of his adventure and scattered the ashes of his forearm there. Since then, Aron has returned a dozen times to the site of the accident, where he has spent a total of 127 hours. Now you know, who is Aron Ralston. If you like this video, don't forget to comment, share and subscribe. And for my part, I will see you in another episode of Who Is.